This is Hemant.
And Jessica.
And you're listening to the Friendly Atheist Podcast. Please go to patreon.com/Friendly Atheist Podcast to support this show and get your ad-free and bonus episodes. And I'm excited to announce that I've recently joined the Creator Accountability Network. CAN is a nonprofit dedicated to reducing harassment and abuse through ethical education and a system of restorative accountability. I joined because I care about the safety and well-being of my community members. If you feel my behavior or content has harmed someone, please report it to CAN, either via the reporting form on their website at creatoraccountabilitynetwork.org or via their hotline at 617-249-4255. They'll help me make it right and avoid repeating that mistake in the future. CAN also needs volunteers from our communities to help with their work. So if you have skills you think would be helpful or time and a desire to help, please visit their website to find out how you can volunteer. Most importantly, get the word out to other creators who you think would be interested in getting credentialed. Help us build safer communities together. And, Jess, you have an announcement as well.
Yes, we just released some new merch.
You've been clamoring for it.
Yes, I'm so excited with how it all came out. You can head over to friendlyatheist.spreadshirt.com, or if you just go to our website, friendlyatheist.com, there's
friendlyatheistpodcast.com.
Thank you so much.
The store is there. It has all the merch in whatever form you want it.
Yeah.
The designs are really beautiful.
Yeah, do you want to talk about them a little bit? Do you have any favorites off the top of your head?
There's one with Dottie as a third co-host. There's one that just says, "Oh," with the shape of Oklahoma on it. It's things that if you listen to this podcast regularly, you might get a kick out of. And if you want to get merch, because you're a person who enjoys wearing podcast merch, there's the way to do it. And obviously, we get a small percentage of whatever you buy there, too. So it helps us, too.
Yeah, and, stuff's rough out there for a freelancer and her co-host. So, this is helpful. My friend Jackie Ronan Whitehouse designed them for me. I'm going to do like a quick little interview with her, and we'll post that because she's wonderful. And we have the third co-host, and it's just a big picture of Dottie with Hemant and I like faded into the background. We have the 94% woke, which was from I
feel like it was from an episode at some point.
Yeah, it was some dum-dum who was trying to get pastors into schools instead of counselors, because he was like, these counselors, they're like 94% woke, which was very funny for me. There's one that says, Satan really likes your outfit today.
Aww.
I don't remember saying that, but it's so funny.
There's a cute picture of Baphomet can identify however Baphomet wants.
That one was...
That's adorable.
Sweet Jackie was like, what is I had to look up what Buffet. I was like, yeah,
Perfect.
Don't worry about it.
But yeah,
so it's
check
that
it all
one.
out. It's
Oklahoma
all there.
is not okay. 94% woke. The third co-host one, and Satan really likes her outfit.
Yep. And they come in baseball hats, shirts, hoodies, whatever you like.
Yeah, whatever you want. You can grab one. I have a couple alts for a lot of them, so, keep your eyes peeled. There might be some other versions of this coming up in the little while, but I love them. I'm really excited. My husband is he's like, do we have to buy them? And I was like, I think so. I don't think we're the kind of people who get free things. So yeah, I'm really excited. And there's also just our name, Friendly Atheist Podcast, and just the A with the radio logo thing. So yeah.
Get them all. Collect them all.
Collect them all. Post pictures on Discord or Facebook if you got it and want to show it off.
All right. And with that, let's talk about some stuff. It's been like 2 weeks since we talked, and I got much to share.
I mean, I think we should go more than once a week. So every other week is going to be...
My brain will break.
Yeah, dense.
Let's start with this, because I'm not sure how many people are aware of this. If I asked you really quickly, hey, there's a war on science happening right now, and there's a book out that's covering the war on science. What subjects should be covered in that book?
Biology.
Go specific. You could talk about how the Trump administration has fired all these employees at science agencies.
Yeah.
Republicans are decimating research funding.
Yeah.
Especially funding that on the surface isn't obvious what they do, but the researchers know the importance of it. How Trump is destroying the NIH, how Trump withdrew from the Paris Climate Agreement, left the World Health Organization, promotes anti-vaxxers.
We're not sure he can actually leave the World Health Organization unilaterally.
He wants to leave it then.
It was a constitutional or a congressional vote that got us in, so we're thinking we being
I don't know if you
Dr.
know this,
Sidney
Congress
McElroy.
does not matter anymore.
I know.
Bird flu, whatever. There's many things you could talk about when it comes to the war on science being waged by Republicans.
If somebody turns this into a trans issue, I'm going to flip this table.
Of course, that's where we're going with this.
It is not.
But
Are you fucking kidding me?
Who's doing it is the question.
Is it one of those
obviously
dum-dums
we know
Dawkins?
we'll get there. We know the Republican Party is the biggest threat to scientific progress we've seen in who knows forever.
I'd say since Galileo.
Sure. And the thing is, I want to raise one more question before we get to the authors of this stupid new book, which is this.
It's a book?
Oh, wait for it. In 2021, do you remember Breonna Taylor in Louisville, Kentucky?
Yeah, of course.
Gets shot by police.
Yeah.
They barged into
Sleeping
her apartment.
in her bed.
Yep.
Killed her. And everyone's like, well, she shouldn't have been asleep in her bed while being black. I don't know.
Exactly. And one of the cops that was involved in that barging in and murder, his name is Jonathan Mattingly. And in 2021, after being a part of that raid, he announced he was going to publish his own version of the events in a book that he was writing. And the thing is, there was so much backlash to the idea of a killer cop profiting off the murder of a black woman that Simon & Schuster, the big book company that owned the smaller publisher that happened to be doing this on their own, like the parent company doesn't always know what's going on. When they found out about it, they said, we are not helping them distribute this book. They're on their own, and we have nothing to do with this. The name of that publishing house that decided to do this was called Post Hill Press. Okay, and the New York Times described that small company at the time as a publisher that specialized in, quote, Christian and conservative political books. And the company said, we stand by this book. His story is important. It deserves to be shared by the public at large. We feel strongly that an open dialogue is essential to shining a light on the challenging issues our country is facing. That same publisher has put out books by Dan Bongino, the guy who's now the deputy director of the FBI.
Dan Bongino.
He's a
is
right-wing
an
conspiracy theorist.
Hey, Bongino.
Not the dude. No. You don't get to make lighthearted fun of this conspiracy nutcase. And it was the publisher was led by somebody who used to run a subsidiary of Newsmax, the right-wing
perfect
outlet. So that's the publisher. And this is the topic, and they're putting out a book about the war on science. And who's behind this book that is being published by a Christian conservative outlet?
It's Richard James Dawkins.
Lawrence Krauss is the person behind it. Dawkins is a contributor.
Of course he is.
But
gotta get his mitts on that.
Oh, there's more. I'll tell you who's writing this book. We have Richard Dawkins, yes. You also have Jerry Coyne.
Naturally.
Of course. Who else do we have? Jordan Peterson makes an appearance in this book.
Oh, Jordan Peterson and Richard Dawkins. Now, if you find yourself in bed with Jordan Peterson, you've made
you are in the wrong bed.
So many mistakes along the way.
There are so many right-wing cancel culture nut jobs. Peter Boghossian's in this book. Steven Pinker is in this book.
I feel like we've interviewed all of these people
at
too.
some point or another, and then we learned our lesson.
Yeah.
But they're all writing this book on the war of science, and recently
science. You said war of science.
Oh, sorry. Same thing
war
now.
War of the science. It's the War of the Roses for the 21st century.
War on science by some scientists, and also Jordan Peterson. I don't know how he got in here.
What is he... What is his specialty? Why is Jordan Peterson somebody anybody listens to?
Right-wing grievance. That's his specialty.
God,
they just released the table of contents, because I heard about the book, and I heard about some of the authors, and it's I feel like this is not going to end well, but also I don't know what you're writing about, right? Okay. I just know the title of the book. Well, Lawrence Krauss released the table of contents.
I'm so concerned.
There are 6 sections in the book.
Okay.
Section 1, free speech, victimhood, and ideology.
Oh, boy.
That covers
Strong
trans
start.
stuff and like Palestinian protesters.
Sure. And they're bad because...
And they're waging a war on free speech on college campuses.
I don't...
Yes.
Hey, Habit, I don't think that's what's happening, actually.
Then you have Chapter 2, Section 2, ideological corruption of academic disciplines, because like sociology and biology have gone woke.
Is this where I can say that thing about the truth has a well-known liberal bias?
Section 3, cancel culture.
Oh.
Section 4, the impact of DEI on scholarship and academia and beyond.
Dawkins, if there was cancel culture, I would not have to think about you every fucking week.
Every single one of these contributors, I swear, has argued
so
I have been
embarrassing.
canceled at some point or another, and they all have platforms.
You've just listed like 4 people who have book deals. What does a girl have to do to write a nonsense book?
Throw trans people under the bus is the answer.
No, I'm not
Section
gonna do
5
that, but I'm
is
a really
gender,
good nonsense writer.
gender, race, ideology, science, and scholarship.
I'm sorry, and this is, I just want to go back. All the authors are white men?
No.
Oh?
No, it's the J.K. Rowling fan club is who's writing this. So you got a bunch of white women in there too. And then the last section is what can be done. And that's the one that has Jordan Peterson's contribution. Because he's good at producing the solutions to all this. So all of these right-wing grievances are better suited for like a Joe Rogan podcast than anything else. This is not what actual scientists discuss when they are commiserating with each other about what keeps you up at night. This is like, let's discuss hydroxychloroquine among the scientists who develop COVID vaccines. Like the people who know what they're doing are like, what the hell are you talking about? This is not science. And the publisher's own description of this book that they submitted to Amazon and whatnot. Listen to this. From assaults on merit-based hiring to the policing of language and replacing well-established disciplinary scholarship by ideological mantras, current science and scholarship is under threat throughout Western institutions. As this group of prominent scholars, ranging across many different disciplines and political leanings detail, the very future of free inquiry and scientific progress is at risk.
Sorry, just really quick, the diverse voices that they have, could you, from all different points of view?
From center-right to crazy MAGA-right.
Alt-right.
To alt-right, yeah. I mean, look, science and scholarship really is under threat. Scientific progress really is at risk. There is a climate of fear that is impacting research. Those threats are not coming from college students who protest, so-called language police. I've never met one. Left-wing bloggers, like they're coming from the highest level of government, which is something you would not know if you apparently read this book.
It feels like these guys are like, hey, the Kent State Massacre, they were protesting pretty loud. So we really did need to murder some students where they stood.
They had to learn their lesson.
Let's hear the police's side of that story. And I bet they were super scared.
There is one blurb for the book, and it comes from Sabine Hassenfelder, who's a physicist and author of a book on physics. But here's what the blurb says. Higher education isn't what it used to be. Cancel culture and DEI have caused many to keep their mouths shut. Not so, the authors of this book.
Why are these people, like, how did we get here? How did I get here?
I don't even know what you're saying.
The hell?
The
That's
people
Rent.
who claim...
How did we get to a moment that Richard Dawkins, which like 10 years ago when I met him was like a highlight of my life, maybe not, but you know.
Yeah. I could say the same. I've met him. I felt that same way at the time.
But what do you, Richard, Dick, what are you doing, bud? You've lost the plot.
He's in a bubble where he's only surrounded by people who talk nonstop about how, like, pink-haired, godless heathens, as that one, who was it? Some lawmaker said that, or some Christian apologist said that.
Yeah.
He thinks those are the problems, and they do not share the same anger toward the people who are actually causing the problems. Like, if you're keeping your mouth shut because of DEI, maybe you should be thanking the people shutting you up because they're preventing you from saying something real stupid.
Honestly, this is like in like between 2016 and 2020, every single historical book that came out was tied back to Hamilton because that's what was in. That's what this feels like. Like, how can we cram DEI into 100%. Literally anything?
And let's talk about this. Krauss, the editor of this book and the one who put together, because I think all these people are on like the same email list. Every time you get canceled, you get added to their list of, don't worry, we're all professors who have said horrible things and we welcome you.
Boring Discord you've ever seen.
Well, he has celebrated dismantling the, quote, DEI nightmare, even calling on Elon Musk to defund scientific institutions that do work in that capacity. And we talked about this several weeks ago. Krauss has argued that over 10% of the U.S. National Science Foundation's grants were for DEI and not science. And how did he calculate 10%? He literally
pulled it straight out of his ass.
ChatGPT.
No,
hey,
he didn't.
Here, I'm copy pasting all the grants from NSF in 2023. Are they scientific or are they DEI? And ChatGPT told him 10% are DEI. It never occurred to him that grants
to check his work?
Yeah, that grants to underprivileged groups might also be scientific. Or that there could be scientific value in getting input from people with different backgrounds. Like, he acts like minorities are getting money for reasons that have nothing to do with what they're studying, which is not how anything works.
I mean, these are people who genuinely think that in the 60s, it was only white dudes working because they were the only ones who were smart enough to work.
Well, the rest of you people don't have the brain cells.
What are they fucking even talking about?
Since we're talking about Krauss, I get to also point out that he accepted money from Jeffrey Epstein even after Epstein pleaded guilty to soliciting minors for horrible, horrible stuff.
Excuse me?
How do you not know this?
I'm offline.
In 2011, this is after that happened, but before the world kind of found out about who this guy was. Krauss defended Epstein, even after that pleading guilty, with one of the worst statements you will ever hear. Oh, are you ready for this?
I don't know.
Mind you, this is before everyone else kind of knew what was going on and before he became a household name, but after he pleaded guilty to already doing some of this stuff.
Oh, God, what did he say?
Here's Krauss. Jeffrey has surrounded himself with beautiful women and young women, but they're not as young as the ones that were claimed. As a scientist, I always judge things on empirical evidence, and he always has women ages 19 to 23 around him. But I've never seen anything else. So as a scientist, my presumption is that whatever the problems were, I would believe him over other people. I don't feel tarnished in any way by my relationship with Jeffrey. I feel raised by it.
Jesus fucking Christ.
Like, it was bad at the beginning, and then they let him keep talking.
This past Christmas or Thanksgiving or something, my mom and I, after drinking, she was like, how come you hate men? Isn't that bad? And which is not an unfair question, Phyllis. And what I said and what this puts me in the mind of is when I meet men, strangers, I am not sure they're going to see me as a whole human being or as a little accessory in their life or in their like little main character story. And it's because of things like this that these women, these girls were not human companions of Jeffrey Epstein. They were literally props in his life. And that's how these people think of women, especially beautiful women, that they're just sort of props that you can decorate. Like,
Excuse me, he judges things on empirical evidence. So I don't know what you're talking about.
Mikey and I had made a drinking game to one of the Fast and Furious movies, and one of them was women just used as decoration. And then there was literally...
And now you're wasted for
now
life.
my liver is gone.
Yes.
It's run away. It's literally like painted women just standing there being... Like, these people do not believe that these women have interiority, that these women have motivations and hopes and dreams. They are just little props for them to play with. And when they turn 24 and their brain finishes cooking, or 26 or whatever it is, they have no use for them. And it's embarrassing.
So that's the guy who's editing this book. Coyne and Dawkins, who we've talked about constantly, they cannot stop demonizing trans people. Steven Pinker has been fixated for years now on fighting social justice and wokeness.
I can't remember who Steven
Harvard
Pinker is.
guy with the hair.
With the hair.
Yeah, you'll see it.
Yeah.
Peter Boghossian still thinks he's a victim of free speech and has waged a war on pronouns. Jordan Peterson. Imagine writing a book about the threats to science and thinking, you know who's a voice of reason? The guy who tweeted out fetish porn because he believed it genuinely came from a, quote, like a Chinese sperm extraction factory. And he's like, look at what's going on. Listen.
What words
Google
did you
that.
just say to me?
Google it. You will find it, and you'll be very sorry you listened to
Listen,
me.
we've entered a new era where things we say are going to get printed on T-shirts, so we need to be careful with what we say.
I said Chinese sperm extraction factory. And then the other contributors who are not atheists, so they're probably not names that our listeners may be familiar with, but just to give you an idea of who the other contributors are to this book, we have someone who called for more white people and fewer Asians in the country. Another person who defended what I just mentioned. Someone who argued that the bones of indigenous people belong to science labs and not tribes. People who supported Israel's genocide. People who denounce Black Lives Matter while backing the use of the N-word.
Sure, that one's an important thing. That's worth fighting for.
People who deny climate change. Mind you, Lawrence Krauss recently published a book about climate change, like a real, actual, good, decent book about climate change. But in this collection, he's like, oh, climate denier? Sure, come talk about the war on
Big
science.
old tent we got here for you.
People who have perpetuated the opioid crisis. People who have been accused of...
Perpetuated the opioid crisis. Like
They
literally the
like-
Statler family?
They're like defending Purdue Pharmaceuticals in court.
Wow, they're so brave.
People who have been
Christ, these people.
accused of gender-based harassment, people who have been accused of sexual misconduct, just a whole bunch of people who routinely get dunked on by the entire internet for good reason, then pretend they are the victims. These are the sorts of people who work with that right-wing fake University of Austin who signed the maligned Harper's letter, which is like free speech is under attack. These are people who love Barry Weiss and Bill Maher. These are people who love when conservative New York Times columnists defend bigotry. A lot of them, like more than one of them, resigned from their cushy university jobs because they knew they were about to get fired for the shit they were doing.
Whoa.
And then they get notoriety because they say they were trying to silence me. They whine about free speech because they can't deal with criticism. And the one thing they never do is adjust their thinking when confronted with more nuanced information, which you would think is kind of the whole point of science.
Sort of their whole jam, I would think.
And again, the people who have now thrown away their credibility are now pretending to understand the real attacks on science. And there isn't a section in this book called, like, Republicans. These people act like progressive activists and trans people who want to exist, and universities that promote inclusion, and academics who study things that they don't understand or think are beneath them. Those are the true enemies of science, and not the politicians dismantling the finest scientific institutions in the world. Like, there is a real book you could be writing about the modern war on science.
Yeah.
This ain't it. And the one last thing to point out, a couple of years ago, Krauss wrote a foreword to a different book called The War on Science, which, as far as I could tell, I have not read it, but it actually looks like a decent book. I'm not sure why you would want to duplicate the title unless you were trying to get people's attention.
And was like, I love this idea for a book. I'm going to steal it. What a stupid
Unless
idiot.
you were trying to get people who look up the more popular book to find your right-wing book. I don't know.
He just stole the idea for a book that he was featured. This fucking idiot.
Seriously.
How
Do you understand how...
have they always been this stupid?
I mean, if they were, that means I was dumb for a very long time,
Right?
which is not out of the question.
Right.
But at the same time, I'm like, I don't remember them being this bad for
Like-
this long, unless I just totally missed it, in which case, you know, my
mean,
bad. I hope I'm doing better now.
I just cannot. I'm trying to like transport myself to 10, 15 years ago and imagining that, you know, in 10 years' time, Dave Silverman, right wing, Lawrence Krauss, right wing, Richard Dawkins, right wing.
And by the way, when you say right wing, just to be clear, a lot of these people, not Silverman, like Dawkins and Krauss, have openly said, we don't like Trump. I don't even know if Dawkins can vote here, but like they do not vote that way. They will be, like Jerry Coyne begrudgingly voted for Kamala Harris
Oh my
and
God,
whatnot.
he's so brave.
I know.
Thank you so much for
But
your
when we say
service, you
right wing,
motherfucker.
it's more like they believe right wing conspiracies, not necessarily support Republicans.
That is maybe a sloppy use of but regardless, I don't know. It's hard when I grew up or became an adult thinking that they were on my team.
Yeah.
You know, like thinking at least we have the Dawkins of the world who are going to stand up to whatever. You know, David Silverman going on, what's his, Chris Matthews? No. Somebody else. The tide goes in, tide goes out. Like we had people advocating, Bill O'Reilly. We had people advocating for us and saying that like, you should change your mind when given new information and teaching us how to think as atheists.
And instead of speaking truth to power, they're like, oh, I'm just going to go where the power's at.
Truly. Like, I don't know if it's the lead poisoning that's given them marble brain, but something happened to, like, our intellectual leaders, and it sucks. Because, like, who's left?
I think the bigger question
Fucking
is...
us and Seth Andrews?
Did they change, or were they always like this and now just realize they have permission to do all the shit they were thinking? Because that's a scarier thought that, wow, were they hiding these beliefs all along, or have they just been red-pilled this badly?
That's true. But also 10 years ago, nobody was expected to have a strong opinion about trans people, right? Like that wasn't necessarily a thing anybody was like kicking around with in 2014 as much as now.
No, now they're used as a weapon.
Right, exactly. Right. So, I mean... Oh boy, I don't know. I don't know what to say. I don't know how to deal with people who taught me how to think and have completely lost the plot.
Yeah.
It's miserable.
So anyway, if you want to hear about the actual war going on, that's what the rest of these stories are about. I have so many to discuss. I'm not going to get to all of them, but there's a few I think are worthwhile here.
All right.
This is about Congressman Mark Alford of Missouri. Remember, Republicans over the past couple of weeks, they were doing town hall meetings like they would normally do, but now more people are coming out and yelling at them and demanding they stand up to Elon Musk and Donald Trump. And the Republican Party has officially told them, stop having town halls. Do not meet with your constituents. It's not a good time for our people. And by our people, we just mean the people who suck at their jobs. But last week, a Republican congressman, Mark Alford in Missouri, he had a meeting with his constituents. He was one of these guys who there were cameras everywhere, and then it went viral because either a questioner said something great or he said something stupid. That's what a lot of these viral things have been. So someone asked him to defend Elon Musk's strategy of just firing everybody, even though he doesn't know what they do or how important their jobs are. And there's no defense for that. Like, you cannot defend that. And so when you have people in your district who are like, why the hell are we firing all these people? There is no good answer to that. Mm-hmm. So what did this guy tell his attendees? I would play the clip for you, but it's really hard to understand because there's a lot of yelling going on. But I will tell you what he said to these people. Again, they were asking, why are good people getting fired from their jobs? These are not people not doing work or wasting money. We need them. And this is what Alford said. Just because you have a government job doesn't mean it's a lifetime appointment like a Supreme Court. What? So I would encourage anyone who finds themselves in this situation to realize that we're going to get this economy turning again. There are jobs available. God has a plan and purpose for your life.
That is to take away your job and make you scramble to find a new one? It's
just a wildly idiotic thing to say when roughly 30,000 people in Kansas City, where he's from, work for the federal government. Oh. And especially when all those people who are losing their jobs did not do anything to deserve it. He wants them to blame God instead of him or assume this is part of God's plan. Like he's cosplaying as a pastor when it's literally his job to help these people. And he's suggesting that he has no role to play in what the administration is doing, even when he's actively propping up all those people. Like, God is not going to pay their mortgage or provide them with health insurance. And if God's plan and purpose for these people who just had their livelihoods destroyed, if that's true, then the same God caused that suffering. I'm not sure why that God is worth worshiping. The only thing God and Elon Musk have in common is that neither one was elected.
Womp womp.
But it's kind of amazing that Republicans
really
want everyone to trust someone else's plan when they don't have any knowledge of the specifics. Like Elon doesn't have any idea what he's doing, but Republicans want you to trust him too. And his heartless response just reminds me of the same way well-intentioned but wrong people say to you if you've gone through a tragedy, right? God is looking out for you. This is part of God's plan. And we've talked about this, back in the day, which is that stuff doesn't make you feel better, but also the people saying it usually didn't mean anything by it. They're just looking for words of comfort. But here, right now, this is not comforting. The government should not be in the business of thoughts and prayers. And what's amazing in the clip when this dude says that is that the people in Missouri let him have it.
Yeah.
And you have to imagine a lot of these people are Christian. One of them said, "We don't want your God." Another screamed, "Our God is Christian."
Whoa.
And another guy said, "Federal workers don't need thoughts and prayers. We need people to stand up for us and make clear that Musk is not the president." And he said his answer, Mark Alford's answer, was not a real answer.
Yeah.
But this is a Republican in a ruby red district, and he's not going to be listening to anybody anymore. And actually, when a local newspaper wrote about the things he said, he responded to them, the God has a plan and purpose for your life. He retweeted that article and said, actually, the full quote I said is God has a plan and purpose for your life. You are not a victim. You are a victor.
Oh, I hate that. Oh, that's bad.
That did not make anything better.
Oh, no. You can't do the play on words thing. No.
I love that. I said something stupid. You guys misquoted me.
Yeah,
I said two things that were stupid.
I said a different, more stupid thing, and you get it right. What dum-dums. Hey, just really quick reminder that if you've lost your job and you own your house and you're having trouble making your mortgage, call your bank. They don't want to take your house. Call your bank, work out a thing. Do not just sit and let the payments stack up. They don't want to take your house from you. Banks are not in the real estate market. Anyway.
I think you deserve one good news story. Here's a good news story really quick. Do you remember Sean Faircloth? He used to be the executive director of the Secular Coalition for America. This is from 2009 to 2011.
I think I met him.
You may have if you've gone to conferences or anything like that.
I had dinner with him.
But again, this is a guy who ran the lobbying group in D.C. representing non-religious Americans. And he was also, one of the reasons he had that job and they hired him is because before he became that lobbyist or the head of the group doing the lobbying, he served 5 terms in the Maine House and the Maine Senate between 1992 and 2008. Most of those years he spent in the legislature. After he left the Secular Coalition for America, still wanted to do public service, he won a seat on the Bangor, Maine City Council for 3 years. That included a stint as mayor because they rotate among city council members.
Oh, that's fun.
I think in 2018, he announced he was running for governor of Maine, but he dropped out because fundraising and also that happens. A lot of people say they're going to run, they drop out. All that's to say, he's been a public servant for a long time. He's also done community service work. He actually, I think, went to Ukraine to help Ukrainian refugees.
Wow.
And recently, what happened in Maine in December is that one of the state representatives vacated his seat because he was selected by the Maine legislature to be the state treasurer. And that's how they do it. So that guy took up that new job. There's a vacancy.
So they're going to fill it with a Yeti.
That's right. That's how it works in Maine. So in January, Sean Faircloth was nominated as the Democratic candidate on the ballot for the special election. And this is a safely blue seat, but it wasn't a guarantee that a Democrat could just take his place because special elections are weird.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people vote, and who knows what the Donald Trump impact is in, February compared to, before that. Not only, and the guy he was trying to replace won that seat in November with 65% of the votes. So again, safe blue seat, but what's going to happen? Well, the special election happened last week. Sean Faircloth kept the seat blue. He won that seat, and he won with 72% of the vote.
Oh, shit. Nice work, Sean.
Raw numbers, not a lot. It's Maine. There's not a million people
15
there.
people.
Yeah, it was like 2,000 votes total. But 72% of the votes compared to what the previous guy got, that's a big deal. And because he won, Democrats in the state house now have a very slim 75 to 73 majority, which is to say it gives them a little more wiggle room than they used to have.
Well,
and
that's good.
When I looked at his website, or maybe this was an article after he won, he said the things he cared about: climate, children's issues, women's rights, economic development, affordable housing, stuff like that.
Sure.
He's not there to advocate for atheism.
Regular stuff.
Yes. I also appreciate that if you don't know this about Sean, this is back when he was the executive director of the Secular Coalition for America. He wrote a book called Attack of the Theocrats, talking about the danger of the religious right. And it's like, you know what? This guy understands Christian nationalism, as we would call it today.
Sure.
It didn't come up in his campaign, as brief as it was, but we live in a country where that stuff pops up everywhere. And I do appreciate having someone who is well aware of those issues back in the Maine legislature. So yay
that's
for that.
Outstanding news.
Some good news.
I really
there.
like Maine. It's beautiful.
Right? Here's another story that came out last week. We didn't get time to discuss it. The Pew Research Center.
Okay.
Every 10 years or so, they do a massive survey of religion.
Counterpoint,
Huge.
they do one once a month because you say this once a month.
They do different surveys.
Once every 10 years.
Once, yeah.
Every month.
They do this landscape survey, which is the most comprehensive look at religion from pretty much any group, because it costs time. It takes time and money to do a big scale survey. This one has over 35,000 participants, not like 1,000, which is what you're referring to with the every month we talk about some survey.
Yeah.
Those are small scale things. This has 35,000 participants or more. And they did it in 2007. They did it in 2014 and not since. They just released the new data now. That's how
a weird
infrequent it is. I think they were trying to do it in 2020, 2021. COVID happened, so it got delayed. But anyway, a decade ago, when they released the second of these big surveys, the big headline was Christianity is in decline. It had gone from 78% of the country to 71%. The unaffiliated numbers had gone from 16 to 23%. Wow. That's what happened in 2014. And you saw so many stories about, oh my God, Christianity's on the decline, and nuns, NONES, are on the rise.
Yeah.
So the question is, where are we at now? Because this is as comprehensive of a study as you're going to get. And there's a lot of takeaways. I read the report. It's 300 pages and it's all data nerds. It's great. It's great. So let me tell you a couple of the takeaways. The big headline this time around is that the shift away from Christianity has finally appeared to taper off.
Oh, okay.
It's steady. It's plateaued. If you look at the curve, it had been going down, 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 and now it's just leveling off. If there's a slight increase, but not much. So we went from 78% to 71%. Now it's at 63% Christian. But it's been at that level for several years now. Okay. 62, 63%. So Christianity's on the decline, but for the past 4 or 5 years, it's kind of been in the same realm. It's not jumping. It's not declining as much as it used to. Interesting. What about the nuns, NONES? It started 2007. They said 16% are religiously unaffiliated. It went up to 23%. Now it's hovering around 29%, 28, 29%.
Wow.
On the rise, but it hasn't jumped up much in the past few years. Okay. Interesting. By the way, our numbers are rising as Christianities are falling. We are taking from them.
Right.
It's not smaller religions we are taking from. They've been steady at 5-6%.
Got you.
For years.
Judaism, Buddhism,
Everything
all that
is
stuff
the
is it's just Christianity that is. Yeah.
When you break it down, if by age group, every single age group is now less likely to pray, less likely to use the Christian label, more likely to be religiously unaffiliated. Every single group.
Yeah, but Russell Brand now, so he knows what the kids like.
Yes. What else do we have? Fewer Americans today are certain of God's existence. Only 54% of Americans say, I'm certain God exists, compared to 71% in 2007. Only 44% of Americans pray daily, compared to 58% in 2007. And the other thing that it seemed to be a point of debate, not so much an argument, just a debate is, okay, Christianity's tapering off. Maybe we've leveled off, right? However, when you look at the age breakdowns, it seems like all the people who are super religious relative to everyone else are older. It's predictable. Like, who prays daily? If you're 74 or older, 58% of them pray daily.
Well, they're retired. They have more time on their hands.
Among 18 to 24-year-olds, it's 27%.
Busy.
It is like less than half.
Yeah.
And so the point is, as time moves on and old people die off, it seems like the less religious people are going to take up more space, which suggests to me that even if we're leveling off right now, it's just going to keep going.
Yeah.
The trend lines will continue. That's where I think this is going, even though they didn't quite get into what the future holds. So that's interesting. Another thing that they pointed out, atheism historically has always been like a white guy thing. I mean, that's the stereotype, rightly so, because it feels like it. But in 2007, if you just look at people who are religiously unaffiliated, in 2007, 72% of religiously unaffiliated Americans were white. That's now 63% today. So as non-religious people, we are less white than we used to be. And that rise is coming mostly from Hispanics and Asians. So found that interesting. What about atheists specifically? A little less diverse. Here's where we're at today. Today, atheists, 75% white, 10% Hispanic, 8% Asian, 2% black. So we are still white, but less so than we used to be in the past.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. Here's my favorite graph, and then I'll move on from this story.
Okay.
They have a chart that shows, they asked people who participated in the survey, what religion did you grow up in? And I'm paraphrasing the questions here. What did you grow up in? What are you now?
Oh.
And so we could track how many of these people switched religions over the course of their lives. For every one person who becomes a Christian from something else, 6 people leave Christianity.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Let's break that down a little more. For every one person who becomes Catholic under the umbrella of Christianity, for every one person who becomes Catholic, 8.4 people leave Catholicism.
When you say leave Catholicism, could this also be like they died? And
No, these are people who said, I grew up as a Catholic. I no longer call myself Catholic.
Got you.
So for
that's
everyone who
interesting.
joins, 8.4 leave. What about religiously unaffiliated people? For every one person who leaves our group and finds God or something like that, 5.9 people become religiously unaffiliated.
Yeah, that tracks.
So the religious switching this is why I think the trend lines will still continue in the future. Because it doesn't matter, even if they're outbreeding us, those numbers don't seem to be changing. Younger people are less religious, and even people who are older have switched their religions over time.
Wow, that's really interesting. That's a cool thing to dig into.
There, again, 300 pages. There's a lot more data, but you could dig into that
If you guys could see the twinkle in his eye when he says 300 pages of data.
Math. It's fantastic. Let's talk about a constitutional amendment that's being proposed in West Virginia. There is a bill that's been proposed. They want to put this to a vote, and they want the state constitution, these are Republicans in West Virginia, they want the state constitution to acknowledge that the Holy Bible deserves a, quote, place of prominence and reverence in all public institutions. And here's what it
When will I
says.
stop being surprised by this nonsense?
Hey, this is West Virginia. What do you think they're going to do there?
Hey.
So here's what it says. Here's what the proposed amendment to the Constitution would say. The state of West Virginia recognizes the Holy Bible, complete with the 66 books of the Old and New Testaments, as the divinely inspired, inerrant, foundational document for our society and government, an accurate historical record of human and natural history, and the utmost authority for human moral behavior. As such, the Holy Bible and its precepts shall be given a place of prominence and reverence in the public buildings, laws, policies, and schools of the state of West Virginia.
Cool.
Uh-huh.
Cool.
By the way,
cool.
I matched this up with what did the Pew survey say about West Virginia? The percentage of adults in West Virginia who say the Bible is extremely important or very important. I was surprised by this. Guess what it is?
50%.
Extremely or very?
50%.
52%. That's it. I thought it would be way higher.
Hold on.
You nailed
Shut
it.
up. Thank you.
Yes. But
Everybody was waiting for you to compliment
I
me.
thought it would be way higher.
Yeah.
But that means about half of West Virginia is like, the Bible's either, not a big deal.
West Virginia is an interesting state 'cause it's the only one that's like completely in Appalachia, and it really has no, like, it's not really the South, it's not really the North, but Sydney
They
McElroy.
love their Republicans.
Who they do, but Sydney McElroy, who hosts the Sawbones podcast, she's a doctor and was just, apparently they have a new carpetbagging governor that she keeps saying, and he, like, the first thing he did was remove vaccine mandates.
Oh, yeah.
She's pretty...
Which is weird because the guy who's the senator now, who used to be the governor, was strangely really good about vaccines. Despite being a Republican.
It's just absolute madness. It really is.
Now, this bill, not only does it need the support of 2/3 of each legislative chamber, which it could very well have, it would also need to go in front of voters then, which, yeah, probably. But this is also assuming there are going to be no legal challenges to the law. There absolutely will be. But this is what they're trying to do. This is what they're doing in the West Virginia legislature.
Justin and Sydney just got tattoos that say "Fix your hearts or die." I don't know if you remember me talking about that phrase when David Lynch died. It's like a pro-trans thing, and I've been considering getting that tattoo for 5 years now, and I'm like, tattoo envy.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm thinking about it.
All right, let's go back to your favorite state.
West Virginia.
Not even close. There you go. So there is a Republican who argued this week that it should be okay for teachers to beat students with disabilities. Yeah. Because if you don't do that, it's unbiblical. Don't you feel shitty singing right now?
Yeah, I was doing like a Gregorian chant bit, and it really was not...
I waited until you started singing to bring that up, because I thought it would be the right backdrop. So right now, and we have talked about this before because they've tried this shit before. Oklahoma currently permits corporal punishment in public schools, which is a problem in and of itself. Like, teachers are theoretically allowed to hit kids somehow.
Can you imagine?
God. But the law does have a carve-out that exempts students with, quote, the most significant cognitive disabilities. So, like, teachers can theoretically spank kids, but a handful of students are off limits because even they may not understand that they're doing anything wrong, which is also true for other kids. But okay. Now, in 2023, Republicans tried to pass a bill that was like, let's broaden that exemption, not just to students with significant cognitive disabilities, but like, how about all students with disabilities, just to ease it up a little bit.
Well, because you'd hate to like leave it to the discretion of the teacher, because what do they know?
Right. And one Republican signed on as a co-sponsor of that bill. This is in 2023 because he thought it would be a really easy vote. He said, quote, there's going to be nobody who's for corporal punishment on students with disabilities. And then he realized he's a Republican in Oklahoma.
Wait.
They will... Yeah.
Say that again. He thought it wasn't going to pass?
No, he thought it would absolutely pass. This bill to say, how about instead of just saying teachers can't hit students with significant cognitive disabilities, why don't we just cross out significant cognitive? Why don't we just say disabilities? That way more students are not allowed to be hit. He's like, who's going to be against that?
Oh, boy.
And
what did they, like, how did they justify this?
The basic justification against passing that bill a couple years ago, this is from State Representative Jim Olson, who supported this bill years ago. He said the Bible allows hitting kids as a form of discipline, so you gotta leave that option open. He cited Proverbs chapter 13, verse 24, the part that says, spare the rod, spoil the child. And when someone challenged him and said, well, the American Academy of Pediatrics says we should ban any kind of physical discipline against kids because it causes a lot of harm in the long term, that guy chimed back in, Jim Olson, and he said, well, it doesn't matter because, quote, God's counsel is higher than the American Academy of Pediatrics. And then another Republican said teachers need the threat of corporal punishment because how else are they going to keep their classrooms in order? Yes, you are raising your hand.
I have a question. Are these the same people who don't think that their kids should be able to learn about sex or black people
Yes.
from their teachers because the teachers aren't to be trusted?
Yes.
But they want to let the teachers physically abuse kids regardless of their cognitive ability. But they don't trust them
if they only have slight cognitive disabilities.
Sure. Like I have ADHD. Game. Do you think that precludes me from
That's severe? I don't know if it's significant.
I mean, ask the people who listen to this show. I think it's pretty severe.
I need a doctor's note to know if I can beat you or not.
I have a doctor's note, and it even has my IQ on it for some reason.
I mean, as anyone who's a teacher could tell you, if your classroom is so chaotic that you think physical discipline is your only solution, you're not doing your job.
I just can't.
And if you think threatening kids with disabilities, with abuse, is the only way to maintain order, what the hell are you doing?
As a person who works with kids and adults with special needs, it's so unfathomable to take your own bullshit out on literally the most vulnerable people in the country. Mm-hmm. And this is what Oklahoma is spending their precious time doing.
This one was 2 years ago. This version that we're talking about was 2 years ago. But that bill got through the state house only after it was amended to say, okay, how about this? What if we let teachers hit kids with disabilities, but the parents need to opt in and tell us it's cool? And then the House is like, all right, we're on board with that. Yeah. And then...
Excuse me?
Seriously.
They want parents to write a note that said, like, hey, my nonverbal autistic kid who's wheelchair bound, if he's acting up, you can give him a whooping.
I think the bill said the significant disabilities, cognitive disabilities, are still off limits.
Oh,
but if they just have some disabilities, parents need to say it's okay. Now, the state Senate got that bill, and they just didn't have time to pass it, so it didn't pass. Last year, senators brought it up again.
How are they demonizing Democrats? Wait a second. They are spending years of legislative time to try to amend the Constitution to mean public servants can hit children, whether or not they're disabled. How are they able to demonize Democrats? How is this happening?
The propaganda network that they're very good at having.
I feel like I'm losing my mind.
Anyway, last year, senators brought up this bill again because it didn't pass the 2023.
Who are the constituency that are demanding this of their state senators?
All the Republicans.
Are they really, or are they just why? Like who? Why? Who's motivated? Like
as soon as you say there's a biblical mandate to hit kids, everyone has to fall in line. Otherwise, you hate Jesus. That's the rule.
I just do not understand how you could possibly think that this is a good use of your time and leadership.
Dude, you're asking me to make sense of Republican policies. I cannot.
But somehow half this fucking country wants this. I don't understand what's going on anymore.
I watched that stupid Trump speech this week, and I'm like, how the hell does half the country think this guy is strong, smart? I don't get it.
He's so stupid.
In 2024, senators brought this bill up again. This time they said, forget the opt-in clause for parents. We're going to take that out, but we're going to rewrite the bill so they cannot beat up any kids with disabilities. Like, we don't need an opt-in. Like, they're off limits, right? And the bill specifically prohibited teachers from, quote, hitting, slapping, paddling, or using any other means of inflicting physical pain on students if they have an IEP, like an individualized education program, which is what you get if you have any kind of disability.
And I'm sure Oklahoma is like trying like hell to get rid of those because they probably cost $5 per student instead of $0.
That bill should have been a unanimous vote because all they were doing is saying, let's go from you can't hit kids with significant cognitive disabilities to just disabilities. And again, what happened last year? A Republican state senator, his name is Shane Jett, he's the one who defended hitting kids. He said, effectively, we're taking a tool that has been in the hands of parents and in the hands of schools to maintain discipline, and we're removing it from the parents' prerogative and saying, we, Big Brother, the state of Oklahoma, knows what's best for your child, and we're removing an entire motivational tool from discipline in the classroom. Then he went on to say, Dr. Benjamin Spock, the parent doctor guy from way back when. Dr. Benjamin Spock published a book that said, don't discipline your children, don't spank your children. And a lot of people don't know that his voice was elevated because it fit a particular agenda. Dr. Benjamin Spock was a socialist. That means he's a communist.
Oh, wait.
Yeah, that's what he said last year in defense of hitting kids.
He's a socialist. That means he's a communist?
I don't know, man.
Is that a thing you made up, or is that a thing he said with his human mouth?
That's the thing he said. And he also said, are we sending a message that we don't love our children? Then he said,
Christian love is
fucking
bonkers.
If you don't discipline children or you create a class of children that cannot be disciplined, those discipline problems are going to cascade through the rest of society. I urge you to vote against this bill. It is bad public policy. By the way, as a side note, Dr. Spock, like not the Star Trek dude, but the parent dude, he pushed for universal health care, decriminalization of abortion and homosexuality, guaranteed income for families, and the end to the war in Vietnam. That's why he was called a communist. Anyway, that bill passed in the state Senate, and then it died in the House last year because they ran out of time. So we're doing it again. A similar bill was
Oklahoma
filed.
has, among other things, a time management issue, it seems.
Seriously, they're not good at the job.
Yeah.
Being
a state.
They're trying again now. Third time in a row.
Okay.
They're trying this bill again. It would prohibit...
Third time's a charm.
It would prohibit corporal punishment from being used against any kid with any disability. So it's a slightly broader version of the law they have now. It would still allow teachers to hit kids who don't have IEPs, but if they have one, you're not allowed to hit them. Shouldn't be any opposition to this, but I want to play for you, what did Shane Jett say this time around? Because this is the dude who was so vocal against it last year. I want to play for you what he said this time around.
What a waste of a dope name.
I know. Here you go. Here's Shane Jett.
My question remains,
Shaney and the Jet.
how does the author of this bill rectify or bring congruent with Proverbs 23:13 that says, do not withhold discipline from a child. If you punish them with a rod, they will not die. Punish them with a rod and save them from death. And the author cited that they are different, but in Scripture, it's uniformly applied to everyone. Is there a different application of salvation? If you have a hearing aid, there's a difference for you. If you have eyeglasses, it's different for you. Don't talk about IEPs, because that's not what this bill covers. It's a subset. It's all disabilities. Here's another one. Proverbs 29:17. Discipline your children, and they will give you peace, and they'll bring you delight, and delights you desire. In our classrooms, how are we going to maintain discipline so that our teachers can teach academics if we have this disparate way of disciplining children? You can't discipline this one because of this reason or that.
So that's what this dude's arguing this time around.
Can you imagine thinking, oh my God, first of all, I figured out why they can't get fucking anything done in that stupid state, because he talks so
slow.
fucking slow.
Had to play that for myself at like 3.0 speed.
I almost asked you to speed it up because I was like, I don't have time for this. First of all, imagine.
It's also how I watch movies. White Lotus 2.5.
You truly live one of the most joyless existences
That is correct.
I've ever encountered. Like
if I like a show, I'll do like 1.8.
What about Survivor? Survivor's always regular.
Because I'm watching it in real time.
I just don't this is another thing that I don't understand. You're a smart person. Why do you refuse to let yourself have any joy? And the only thing you like is a show of people being terrible to each other.
I did like Squid Game as well.
I've been to your house. Your kids are so lovely and fun-loving. Like, what happened?
Give me time.
You're such a lunatic.
This is the argument this dude is making this time around.
Because they have a hearing aid or glasses, sir.
He's like, oh, well, what? We can't hit them now? Because...
Does he think... Has he been to the rest of the country, I guess is my first question. Like, does he think that all over... And also, he keeps talking about parents. This is for teachers, right?
This is for teachers in public schools.
And also, can we talk about the word discipline? Because the word discipline is not synonymous with beating the shit out of a child. The word discipline can be like, hey, stop doing that, or I'll take away your toy.
And again, if you talk to any teachers, they all have their methods of discipline that do not involve, let me hit this kid.
Why does he want? I'm so confused.
This is a conservative Christian thing. We've talked about it with fundamentalist Christians. Michael and Debbie Pearl once wrote a famous guide to religious
in
abuse.
your own house, you can do whatever you want. This is a school.
They think it's all the same.
It's not.
In their world.
But they're not parents.
Doesn't matter. To train up a child. That's what their book was. It's a whole book that told Christian parents how to properly hit their kids.
I just cannot understand hitting a child.
In Oklahoma, people have taken advantage of the law that says you can hit kids. The most recent data I could find is from like 2017, 2018. And that report said Oklahoma educators, used physical discipline nearly 4,000 times. And the federal government reported that the corporal punishment was administered at more than 1,800 Oklahoma schools. So this is not like, okay, even if the law permits it, no one does it. No, they actually use it.
Do they hate children? I think it's a little bit the way I was talking about, they don't see women as like full human beings with interiority. I feel like it's the same thing for kids too. Like they train them like a dog.
So just to be clear, the bill that he was debating was one that said right now the law says you're only allowed to hit students except for kids with significant cognitive disabilities. This bill that they were talking about would cross out those two words and say any disabilities. Teachers cannot hit kids with any disabilities. That is what this guy was arguing against, because he wants the pool of students you can beat up to be as large as possible. And that's what the clip was. He wanted to argue, don't change the law. The law is fine. The good news is people did not listen to him. The Senate passed the bill to broaden the exemptions for who could be hit, 31-16. And the only way you do that in the Oklahoma Senate...
That's not a big enough margin.
But all Democrats, and some Republicans voted to pass that bill in the Senate saying, no, we want to hit fewer children. And that's the bill currently in the State House. There you go.
I'm just imagining myself at the barn where I'm walking a big half percheron, half quarter horse with a rider on top who's like 6'4". And guess which one of those I hit the most? None. I don't fucking hit horses either. I don't hit horses or humans. I'm an adult. I use my fucking words and my training and the ability to judge a situation without physically lashing out. Is it so difficult not to hit a thing?
Have you not been to church lately? Clearly not.
I haven't been. Maybe that's why. Oh my God, these fucking, what? How is this, you're going to pray at night before you go to bed, and it's like, dear God, please, please, please. These nonverbal autistic kids have had it too good for too long. Please, God, let me smack one in the face tomorrow.
It brings them joy.
They
disgusted. Are Republican Christians.
How are
in
we
Oklahoma.
the villains in their story?
I agree. I figured I would leave you with one slightly happier.
I'm sweating. That got me my fight or flight going.
I wouldn't say this is good news because a bad bill passed, but there is a good element to it. You may have seen this in the news that last week in Iowa, the Republicans who control the state passed a bill that basically rescinds civil rights that had previously existed for trans people. It removes gender identity as a protected class under Iowa's anti-discrimination laws.
Cool, Iowa.
Iowa is now the first and only state to take away civil rights protections from a group that had previously been protected. So that is awful,
you really
disgraceful.
Ought to give Iowa a try. That's
sure.
From the music, man.
So expected, because that's what happens when you vote for Republicans. There you go. This bill isn't going to help anybody. Women and children won't be protected because of this assault on trans people, despite whatever Kim Reynolds said when she signed the bill. But before the state Senate passed this bill for the governor to sign, there was a Democratic state senator, Tony Bisignano, who gave a speech basically calling out the Republican Party's hypocrisy on this issue.
Really?
Yeah. And again, he knew this was going to pass. So this is his chance to just get your say in before we vote.
Am I listening to this?
Time. You will listen to this. Okay. Yeah. He was especially furious at the bill's sponsor, Jason Schultz, who fast-tracked the bill to make sure it could get signed real quickly. Mm-hmm. So, because the less time you have to discuss and debate the bill, the less media coverage there will be. He also rejected Democrats' amendments, and then he said, like, he took pride at this rollback of rights, and they didn't even bother defending the bill. They were just like, yeah, we have nothing to discuss. Let's do the vote. There's not, because they can't defend it. So anyway, and by the way, Schultz, the Republican who is behind this bill, he also leads a weekly Bible study in the Iowa Capitol. So that is what Tony Bisignano was fighting against, trying to call out. And let me play this because I think you will enjoy listening to his righteous anger.
Do you got anything legitimate to talk about why you're screwing people in housing, and in employment, and in health care and everything else? Can we talk about it over there? You hurt more people than I've ever seen in my political life, and you never speak about it. The only thing you can't wait to do is say the prayer in the morning. Follow what you say. What have they ever done to you? Most of you don't even know somebody who's transgender. You don't even know them, but you hate them. You have to hate them because you cannot do what you're doing today if you didn't. But we'll say a nice prayer to start the day. We always do. And then we proceed to violate people over and over and over again. All they want's their fair shake in life. They want to be like you. They want to live with you. Shame on you. Shame on all of you Christians who want to keep talking about your faith when this is what God talked about. I don't know where you go to church and I don't know what you read. But being a good Christian doesn't take much. Do unto others. Take care of your neighbor. Keep your hand out of other people's pockets. Not much, but you wouldn't know it in this chamber. You wouldn't know it. You think that this side of the chamber are the most raging Christians in the world.
Talking about the Republican side.
Shame on you, Christians.
Then he basically dropped the mic and walked out.
Yeah, that was very good.
Yeah, I mean, it's a hell of a speech. That guy's Catholic, by the way. And he told the Advocate that one reason he was compelled to speak out was because the cruelty affects someone close to him. That's not the only reason. I mean, you could do it even if you don't have someone close to you. But he said the unnecessary cruelty that is coming from people who relish these public displays of religion, that ticked him off. He said his niece, who's transgender, had been his guiding light. He also said, I had to call it out because I'm Catholic. We're Christians. And I asked him in a speech a few days ago, what Bible do you use at your Bible study? Because I've not seen quotes ever apply to what you are doing here. And then he added, transgender people need champions and voices, and not people voting against people because they're afraid. They need somebody willing to take it on the chin, and I'm willing to do that.
Well,
which is fantastic. It reminded me of Michigan State Senator Mallory McMorrow, who said a couple years ago they called her a groomer because she wanted to defend LGBTQ children, and she gave a wonderful speech about being a straight, white, Christian, married, suburban mom, but that she was going to protect kids from being marginalized and targeted because they are not straight, white, and Christian. Congressman Maxwell Frost from Florida has repeatedly used this sort of language, saying, I oppose my faith being used to whitewash a racist, violent, and dangerous ideology. But I think what I appreciate about this Bisignano's speech here, it shows what Democrats can do when they stand up for what's right, even if they know they're outnumbered. Like, only one side has the moral high ground here, and they cannot be afraid of making that case, even if some moderate Democrats are willing to throw trans people under a bus. Gavin Newsom from California did that today because it's politically convenient for them. And this is not new for this guy, by the way. Bisignano, last year, he condemned another Republican colleague who attacked President Biden for recognizing Trans Visibility Day. And at the time, that colleague said the declaration was incompatible with the teachings of Christianity. And this guy basically spoke out against it. He said the hate, bigotry, and blatant racism that occurs in this chamber is disgusting, and I'm done listening to it. And I was looking through the guy's Facebook page, and the thing that surprised me is that a couple of weeks ago he had a picture, and it was with the president of the Iowa Atheists and Freethinkers.
Hey!
And he said, today I met with Jason, a constituent of mine who represents the Iowa Atheists and Freethinkers. Jason brought some concerns around upcoming legislation to my attention, and we discussed the effect it'll have across the state. So I asked Jason, hey, what'd you guys talk about?
Yeah.
That's fantastic. And he didn't get specific. I don't know. It wasn't the bill we were talking about right now. But one thing he told me, Senator Bisignano's speech was representative of how he's been a staunch supporter of equality and human rights for everyone. I am proud to say he's the senator that represents my district. And even despite our disagreement on faith, he's willing to say and do things that protect all Iowans.
That's great.
Yeah, so that's what Jason Bonnell...
that's what it looks like. That's what being an ally looks like.
Right. So I'll stop there for now. Even though there are 77 more stories to cover.
I'm so tired.
I know. What are we talking about in the bonus episode?
I went to a taping of Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me.
Okay.
In some very wild circumstances that I will tell you.
Cannot wait to hear.
I just went to a lecture about the Tudors.
Okay.
And I went to a water park with my niece and nephew. And it was adorable. They are very cute. The water park was fucking insane.
Excellent. I want to talk about the Oscars as well.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I watched that.
Where can people go? You can go to patreon.com
do all the
/friendly atheist podcast to support this show. Go get your merch at friendlyatheistpodcast.com. You can just click on the link to the store and you can get all your favorite hoodies and caps and whatever it is other people wear in public. I wouldn't know. I've never gone outside. And you can leave a review on the iTunes.
This one is called Waste of Time. Not a serious examination of any given topic. Shame to have wasted any time on it.
5 stars, though? 5
Nope,
stars?
1 star.
Boo.
Boo.
Boo. Leave us a better review than that. We appreciate your hate.
I don't understand
We
how
thrive.
Yeah, I truly, it
Thrive on your
feeds me.
hate.
Oh, it feeds me. I'm like Red Hulk over here. What does that mean? Nothing.
All right, we'll see you next week.
Goodbye.